Welcome back to Mr. Caro Plays FM24. Today we're going to look at what to do now that Football Manager has been delayed by several months. The game is now FM25 is now scheduled to come out in March. What do we do with the remaining months before that game comes out? Now, obviously, you can continue your saves, all that kind of fun stuff, or you could start a new save, have a little bit of fun, maybe manage teams that you wouldn't normally manage, try out some different leagues, whatever, see what you can do with that time remaining. Now, one thing you can do is download kind of custom databases from the community. I've got the FM Scout database here, and we're going to run through 5 options of teams that you can manage on FM24 to get you through the wait for FM25. The first of which is Santos. They play in the Brazilian second division. They are a pretty prominent name in Brazil. They got relegated, I believe, maybe last season. Obviously, they're predicted to finish first and get back to the first division. Perhaps it's a little bit of an easier save, and some of the saves I recommend in this will be easier to start off with, but I guess with any save, perhaps it's a long-term project. I prefer long-term projects myself, which means you sometimes will have some relatively easy starts, and then obviously it becomes more of a challenge as you progress. Now, if we look at Santos themselves, obviously they've got a good reputation of continental. They've got good, relatively small stadium, perhaps. I don't know what other stadiums in Brazil are like. However, excellent training facilities, good youth facilities, and a rich vein of history. If we go into the history itself, you can see that they have won a lot of championships, a lot of cups within a lot of all that state championships, all of that fun stuff. Like I said, I don't know a lot about Brazilian football. However, Santos are a name that I know. They've got they've got a history of, I think even Neymar played for Santos, for example. They've got some players within their history that make them kind of a standout team in Brazil. Now, if we go to the current squad, obviously, as you would expect from the fact that they have been relegated, a lot of those players perhaps have left. And they've got kind of a mixture of old and young players, some kind of more experienced players within the team, as well as kind of maybe some players that have been loaned out. You can see that down here, for example, a guy used to play for Rangers. Afonso Alfredo Morales has been loaned out to a team in Colombia. Yeah, to a team in his home nation. He'll come back at some point, maybe provide a bit of experience. That's kind of an option with that. And you've got other players within there. If we go to, for example, I believe, did I see in here, for example, this dude over here? I believe he played a lot in kind of Europe and in Saudi Arabia. So yeah, there are a lot in Russia, for example. There are lots of kind of journeyman players, if you like, interesting players that have made their way to Santos. So that is one option, a very good option to start off with. With the power of YouTube, we are going to skip ahead to the second option. Okay, the second option I'm going to recommend today is Deportivo La Coruña. Now, obviously, this team is a team well known in the world. They are a team that has been on the decline for maybe the last 10 years. However, they have slowly risen through the leagues. Now on FM25, for example, they will be back in the second division of Spain. Now, obviously, the challenge is half done. Perhaps for a lot of people, it was fun to get them promoted through the leagues. However, you can have a little bit of fun with this team, kind of the fallen giants, if you like. If we look at the team itself and we go for a very similar thing to what we did to Santos, you can see that they've got a good stadium capacity of 34,000, good training facilities, good youth facilities, national reputation. If we go to the team and go to their history, you can see that they have won some actual first La Liga titles, 5 second division titles, a couple of Spanish cups, for example. They have done some decent stuff. Now, if we go to the squad itself, they've got a Football Manager legend, Charlie Pantino. I say Football Manager legend. Perhaps he's not a legend, Football Manager. Certainly somebody who I've seen being mentioned. I think he commented perhaps on someone using him on Football Manager. You can be him in this team, so that's fantastic. He comes from Arsenal. He's now in their team. They've got, I don't know if they've got anyone else crazily interesting. Lucas Pereira, I believe he actually paid his own transfer fee to go to this team. Maybe that's false. I think it's actually true. Interesting player, played for Arsenal, played for West Ham, moved back to Spain. Be a good player. Obviously, his age is 35, so he's kind of on the way out, if you like, to an extent, or an older player. But nevertheless, an interesting player, which makes Deportivo perhaps a very interesting team. If we go to our media prediction of this team, it is 9th. So yeah, not a foregone conclusion. This is actually more of a challenge than perhaps Santos was. But nevertheless, it's a team with good reputation, an interesting team, something to build up, something to have fun with. it's a good team to be. Now, obviously, with the power of YouTube, we will skip ahead to the third choice of team on the list. Okay, with this team, we find ourselves in the English League One. Now, we're going to look at Birmingham City. Now, obviously, being that this is a custom database, they are in League One on this. Now, interestingly, obviously, they have been taken over by an American consortium of people. I know Tom Brady has some ownership within this. I believe it will probably show maybe in the staff section. I'm sure he probably would appear maybe in here. I don't know if he does or not. It doesn't look like he is, but nevertheless, he does own some of this team. It is interesting. It's put some money in the coffers, if you like. I don't know what that relates to in Football Manager on this particular database, but I believe on the next version of this game, you will see some impact within that. Obviously, if we go to their history, you can see they've won a couple of championship titles, a couple of Carabao Cups, a couple of a League One trophy, and a couple of believe that's the Paint Pot Trophy. You can see that their history is not fantastic. They've been in the Premier League a lot of times, been in Championship for a long while, and now they find themselves in League One. So obviously this is a little bit different to perhaps Santos, for example, who had a lot of title wins in Brazil. This is a club that is big because they are an established, one of the bigger cities in England. However, they are not someone perhaps who's had a rich vein of wins of Premier League titles and not so much a fallen giant as such. Just a team that's got a lot of investment, makes it very interesting, adds a little bit of a dynamic to that. And if we go to the squad, you can see money has been spent on this team. You've got a couple of very good players for this division. If we go to, for example, in defense, Belek, he's worth 2.6 million in League One. They signed him from Derby. I don't know how long he's been at Birmingham. Maybe he's been actually for a couple of years, but nevertheless, he is a good player to have within the team. If we go down to Jay Stanfield, now obviously being that this is a custom database, it's not going to show the amount of money that was spent on him. However, I believe it is a record fee for League One. So obviously a player who played for them last season. They signed him from Fulham. Interesting player to have within your team. Now, the interesting thing about Birmingham, perhaps, is it is a team that has a lot of potential, a lot of, already from the off, a team that can, you can build up from there. And if you look at their media prediction, they're saying 17th. I think if they don't already have the players you need to get promoted, you can quickly buy those players, quickly get that kind of, emphasis to build that up. I don't think that's a fair reflection of where they're actually going to end up. Obviously, as well, you've got the training ground facilities getting improved. It's an interesting save to be. It is not necessarily a flawless save. It's not necessarily a save that's going to be amazing in some aspects, but it is an interesting save, and I would recommend taking on Birmingham. Now, with the power of YouTube, we will go to the fourth team. Okay, the fourth team I'm going to recommend is 1860 Munich. Now, this is an interesting one simply because they have they're the second biggest team in Munich. They're not obviously as big as Bayern Munich. However, wouldn't it be fun to build this team up to get them at the level that needed to surpass Bayern Munich? Now, obviously, with a save like this, you would be wanting to play this for multiple years to achieve that. They're actually in Division 3. I think they have got relegated a few times. We'll look at the history in a second. However, obviously, it's a bit of a journeyman save in terms of if you played through this. But it is a fun thing to do. It could certainly take a few months of gameplay to achieve the goal. It wants you to develop your youth through, the club using the youth system. It's an interesting save to have. And Germany is a good league to manage. And there's a lot of money in Germany, a lot of bonuses when you get promoted, a lot of prize money. It's a very easy to build a team in Germany. Highly recommend this team. If we go to their history, you can see that they have one Bundesliga title, a couple of Bundesliga Cups. They have won some stuff in the past. You can see that they have perhaps been in this league longer than I thought they had, actually, to be fair. But not that Bundesliga 2 in 2016, 2017, all the way up in 2002, 2003, they were in the Bundesliga. So not that long ago they were in the Bundesliga, but an interesting team nevertheless. And if we go to their squad, for example, you can see that if we look at the value alone, I know value isn't everything, but if we look at the value alone on these players, that's an interesting bunch of players. Nothing amazing, perhaps, but something to build, something to play with. I highly recommend this. It's a fun save. I think I've done it myself a couple of times. It is interesting for different reasons to perhaps the others. Definitely different reasons to Birmingham, for example. There's going to be less money initially with 1860 Munich, but the journey could perhaps be more interesting. It's not set up for you. You're not set up to success straight from the off. However, it could be fun to play. Now, the final team we will look at with the power of YouTube, we will quickly get there and I will show you the final team. Okay, the final team we are going to talk about today, and I'm probably going to massively butcher their name, is Sassuolo. Now, this is a team that spent, I believe, 11 seasons in a row in Serie A. They got relegated. They're now in Serie B. Initially, you could argue this isn't necessarily the most interesting save, but it is interesting purely because, like I say, they were in Serie A for multiple years. They never really hit the big time. I don't believe they ever got to Europe. Maybe they did. I don't believe so. They're good training facilities, excellent, superb youth facilities, a good stadium. And then if we go to the history itself for this team, like I say, this is more, some of the teams kind of speak for themselves, right? Birmingham, for example, got a lot of money, etc. It speaks for itself. If we look at this team itself, the history of it, again, not the most amazing. Haven't got a rich vein of history, perhaps. However, it is fair to say that a team that was in the Serie A for so long could be a fun save to be. I think it's a really fun save. I think it's definitely fun in there. You look at these players here, for example, they've got a player worth 50, potentially up to 51 million. And then you think, wow, that's kind of crazy, but he's out on loan. Don't know if that's a loan that was already in the game or a loan that has been put in by the database. You got other players within here. Another player could be with 7 to 26 million, for example. There are players, you could sell these players. You've got 25 caps for Italy. You could sell these players, build up some money, completely rebuild your team. There are options available to you. If you look at his wages, for example, that's interesting in itself. 92,000 a week. You're probably going to have to try and shift that anyway to try and level the budget, if you like. So that in itself is an interesting element to this team because they probably don't have the money to keep this going, right? However, obviously you do want to keep this going, so you have to find ways to do that. Maybe selling that player as an option is interesting. Like I say, all of these particular teams have something different about them, but Sassuolo is interesting simply because, like I say, they are a team that was in Serie A for 11 years straight, I believe. They got relegated last season. They're a team that would be fun to bring back, but some challenges financially, perhaps, that need to be made to get you back up to steam. It's just an interesting save. Now, if we summarize again, go back to our initial screen. So we've got Santos. Like a team, let's say Santos is a team, Brazilian. They've won a lot of titles in the past. Interesting, good facilities. More of a journeyman save, in as much as for the team itself. For as much as you've got to get them out of the division, you're going to probably have to do a bit of a rebuild. But I think it's obtainable with that team, pretty, semi easily, perhaps. But time will tell. Obviously, you got Birmingham. Again, I don't know how the database reflects Birmingham in this particular save. On this particular database, but in real life, at least, they have a lot of money to spend, so I'm going to assume that's been reflected in the game. New training facilities on the way, good youth facilities, good reputation, interesting team to be. Deportivo La Coruña, more of a historical team. Not a lot perhaps going on at the second. They just been promoted to the second division, haven't done a lot for the last 10 years. Fallen giant save, big save that people wanted to do over the years. But obviously it's a fun save to take on even when they're in the second division. Still a fun save. 1860 Munich. Interesting because they're the second biggest team in Munich. For a long while they played at the same stadium as Bayern Munich. Then they got moved on to a smaller or different stadium. A little bit of history there. Wouldn't it be fun to make them the biggest team in Munich? I believe so. And the final team is Sassuolo. 11 seasons in Serie A. Got relegated to Serie B. Just an interesting save. Interesting in as much as, it's set up for you to succeed. Financial, I think, is going to be an issue for this team. You got a lot of older players on a lot of money, on that Serie A money, and you're now in the second division. Finances aren't great in Italy anyway, I believe. So it's going to be a fun challenge to try and balance the books. They predicted to come first. It'd be interesting to see if you can achieve that. If you like this video, please give a like and subscribe. Hit the notification button to see when the videos are released. Thank you and goodbye.